we take action. Well, the ideas of a dump and fond memories aren't usually things that you'd normally think of as belonging together, but they do if you're talking about reuse zones in Chittenden County.
Yeah, people loved them. After more than 2 decades, though, the reuse zones closed this fall, but a select board chair has not given up the fight to reopen them in his town. Bard Hill says he always found treasures in the reuse zone in Richmond.
A used lacrosse stick, a working flute, tennis balls for the dog, an antique fishing net.
It was a place to drop off things you no longer had use for, but somebody else might. Well, those days are now over. The Chittenden Solid Waste District Board decided this summer to close its 6 reuse zones.
The reuse zones were identified as a primary driver of unsafe situations.
CSWD Marketing and Communications Manager Johnny Finity says people left dangerous items and overcrowded the drop-off centers.
In Richmond in particular, people were very passionate about the reuse zones, and we get it. I mean, we all have visited the Richmond drop-off center and saw how popular it was.
Bard Hill, the Richmond Select Board chair, says the board voted unanimously to urge CSWD to keep the reuse zones, but it failed when it went to a district-wide vote.
We weren't asked our opinion, customers weren't asked, and I saw that as a problem.
Finity says the decisions were discussed in a public fashion and the district is not required in its charter to have reuse zones. CSWD has offered to move the buildings to communities and towns that want to manage their own reuse zones.
We have a huge fabric of options of reuse, both reuse organizations, nonprofits, online options like Front Porch Forum, Craigslist, and Facebook.
But Hill argues it's best when all waste collection areas are in the same place, so he's not giving up.
A couple of suggestions have come to me from members of the community, including going to our legislators or asking for a regulatory obligation to have the reuse zones open.
So when it comes to going to the legislators, Hill compares it to what happened with mandatory composting and recycling in Vermont.
Yeah, he also says that if those activities weren't mandatory, waste districts might never have done them on their own.
Around the region.